Welcome back, everybody. We're here in Canada at the wonderful Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Who's going to come out fastest of all in the next hour? Yes, it's time for qualifying.
All right, so here we are in Australia, Canada, for our wet qualifying. As you can tell, we're having a little bit of trouble on these intermediates. Not quite enough weather for the full wets, but we're going to be able to get into Q2 with our time of 1:24.011. And like I said, wet weather did come down, and we had to take some precaution here through this final corner, because the back end likes to come out a lot on these wet tires. And as we come across the line, we have traffic behind us, so we're getting pushed back to P12, and so we decided to come out for a second run here, the only person out here on this final run as we come through the chicane, and we needed to improve our time in order to get into Q3, so you can see that we're sitting in Q15. That's going to be good enough to get us into Q3 by a long shot. So since we took that longer time, or took that final run in the drier weather, nobody else came out. That put us provisional pole, but Q3 was weird. We took our final run. We didn't get out early enough to get a dry run, so we're going to be in P10 for the start of this race here in Canada.
We're back once again beside the St. Lawrence River here in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix. The event first moved to the variant of this track back in 1978, and it was won by none other than Gilles Villeneuve, the first Canadian to ever win his home race, and in whose honour the circuit would be renamed. We'll be seeing top speeds of around 210 miles per hour here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, with around 2/3 of the lap taken at full throttle. High-speed chicanes spell potential danger, especially at the infamous Wall of Champions, and watch out for overtaking into the hairpin and that final chicane. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Lando Norris will lead us away from pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Oscar Piastri, Ricciardo, Albon, Hamilton, Perez, Leclerc, Gasly, Johnson, Russell, Sainz, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Sargent, Joe, Fernando Alonso, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track. So I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about this afternoon, and who's going to talk about it with us? None other than Naomi Schiff. Hi, Naomi. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, every driver certainly has their own way of preparing themselves before a race, but I can tell you that pre-race rituals are a real thing. When I was in go-karting, I used to touch every wheel in a specific sequence before I got into the kart. And then I stepped up to cars and had a specific set of fireproof base layers just for race day. So watch the drivers when they're on the grid. Some may be sitting on the floor and isolating, others may be up to other things that they do. But these little things really help their minds get ready for the race.
All right, it was wet in qualifying, but we shouldn't have to contend with rain during the race. Therefore, we should be able to push the car to its limits. Just be sure to take care of the rear tires as best as you can.
Here we go then. The formation lap gets underway and the excitement here is building as we near ever closer to the start of the race. Which team will come out on top? Who's got their strategies right for today's race? Well, we'll soon find out. As the cars come back towards the grid to line up for the start of the race, each driver will be wanting to get the best start they possibly can, and they'll be hoping to finish today's race on the podium, failing that, within the points.
Alright, so there you see our possible race strategies, but only 4 drivers, both Alpines and both McLarens starting on the hard tires, everybody else starting on the mediums for majority of the grid actually. So P9, P10 start, so it's our second start of the season where we're both in the top 10. 5 red lights are on. And we're off to a late start really. Russell on the inside, we're covered off by Leclerc as we're getting overtaken by Sainz as well. Both Ferraris behind us, around us here as we're trying to take the curve as much as possible. Kind of push Sainz out towards the outer part of the track, but he's able to make that position up. We drop down to P12 after those first 3 corners here in sector 1. Hulkenberg behind us, Stroll back in P14. And you can already see that the front group is trying to break away. You see Piastri 7/10 back, 8/10 back now behind Verstappen and Norris, so they're taking off in their own battle. And then you see the gap starting to form between Gasly and Russell a little bit, and then myself and Sainz were already over a second back behind Sainz as we're coming up to the hairpin for sector 3. So a little bit of lockups there as Alonso with that penalty all the way back in P19 against Ichigo. You can see with our momentum, we are losing a little bit of time on Carlos Sainz. We did make a late adjustment right before qualifying. Because we weren't sure how the car was going to handle, because we were trying to get control over how the back end wanted to handle with the tire wear, knowing that these rear tires will wear out faster. But yeah, so first lap not so great, and then later on in lap 2 we're already 2.4 seconds behind. See Stroll there, 2/10. He's gonna have DRS, he's gonna have to make a move on us here at the end of lap 2. You can see we have the downforce for the cornering. We dropped down to 1.8 behind Sainz. Stroll makes that move on us. There's nothing much we can do it. Our car is set up for turning, as there is some damage ahead of us. Somebody hit the wall of champions as Hulkenberg tries to make a move, and that's going to be Russell with the front end plate missing as we turn to the start of lap 3. So a very interesting start to our race. Lap 2. Russell makes a mistake slamming into the wall of champions. No incidents yet having to do with that wall. Lap 7 now. We're finally able to make a strong move here on Russell as we're closing in. He's already 2 seconds back behind Hulkenberg. And then Hulkenberg's 5.7 seconds behind Stroll. So the middle of the field is really stretching out in terms of trying to keep up with everybody ahead to make an easy move on Russell. To start our lap 8, you see the train behind us of Russell, Sargent, Magnussen, Sonoda, and then the rest of them. We finally catch up to Hulkenberg on lap 11. These hard tires really helping us out as these medium tires are starting to fade away, and we're starting to gain some ground. So we made that move on Russell. He's back in P15. Hulkenberg is ahead. Leclerc and Albon are fighting. Now, no pit stops yet. Sorry about that. I'm making a move on the outside of Hulkenberg. He has to evade us as we come very close to the champion's wall. And then 7 seconds between us and Stroll at the start of the next lap. But lap 15 now, with 5.3 seconds behind Lance Stroll, who's in P11. We have our first round of pit stops here coming through Hamilton, Leclerc, and I believe Albon. As Gasly's up into P6 for those first pit stops, we're still ahead of Hulkenberg. And we're looking to hold on because we're going to be coming in around lap 20 at this point. As you can see, the overcast weather is starting to settle in, so we are basically racing to beat the rain practically. As we're coming around lap 16 now, lap 17 to the next set of pit stops. Sainz, Stroll, Ricciardo, Perez. We're up in the P5 behind our teammate Gasly. That's still 7 seconds just under 7 seconds is the gap, as Norris and Piastri are still out on the field, and it's Verstappen, the only person in the top 5 that hasn't gone in for their pit stop yet. So we're coming around the final chicane. Perez, on a new set of hards, has caught up, as he's going to make an attempt to pass us here. That's Hamilton behind as well, so their hard tires, the little hard tires, have better pace here. So we're going to just do what we can. Perez passes us, we're not going to fight it. And I felt like we can try and keep up with Perez and use him to boost our momentum to try to get a really good overcut on some of the other drivers, because we were back in like P12, P13 before the pit stop started. Lap 20 now when we're coming in. Hamilton making that move on the inside. He brakes early, which kind of ruins our entry to the pit lane. See Ricardo there behind Leclerc, and I believe I'm actually Albon on the sides back behind us as we're coming in for our pit stop here onto medium tires. And no issues, really strong pit stop for us as we're back into P12. Hulkenberg still about 10 seconds out, so we're hoping to get out onto the track before he comes through. See the rest of the drivers coming through the final chicane and the Wall of Champions. It's going to be Hulkenberg ahead of us, just barely within range. We have a new set of medium tires, so we can close that gap on Hulkenberg. But at this point of the race, we're hoping to finish before the rain. And yeah, so as we try to chase down Hulkenberg, we're going to go to our commentators for today's race.
The race in Montreal is progressing under overcast skies, with Verstappen leading despite recent setbacks in China and Miami. Nevertheless, he maintains his championship lead over McLaren and Ferrari.
McLaren is working to maintain their championship bid, keenly conscious that time is critical with the threat of rain imminent. Teams are anxious to limit their vulnerability to the rain as it could jeopardise their racing strategy. On another note, we have a pretty mixed up field compared to the last few races. Aston Martin sitting farther back than usual and Ferrari sitting back as well, as other teams are still looking for improvement.
We have Ted Kravitz down at the pit lane, who watched over some of the pit stops from a distance. How is it down there, Ted?
It was actually quite interesting. To our surprise, no one actually went for a two-stop strategy with the threat of rain towards the end of the race. We just saw Piastri and Gasly come in for a late pit stop, pushing Alpine outside of the points at this point in the race. I'm also here with Laura Winter to go over some updates for the season.
Thank you, Ted, for that introduction. I missed out on the race recap this time around. But we do have some important news that has come about throughout the paddock. We heard previously that some changes were going to progress throughout the grid. And what we do know as of yesterday before qualifying is that Ford will be pairing up with Red Bull as well as their junior team B-Carb. And what fans were told by a Red Bull social media post is that both teams will be sporting Ford sponsors on their cars in Spain to the rest of the season, and will be sticking with Red Bull through to at least the end of 2026. We have also learned that other teams are looking at picking up additional sponsors like Haas or Sauber, with a pool of sponsors that are looking to get into F1. We also know that engine suppliers are trying to make their way into F1, as Honda is expected to supply for Aston Martin as soon as next season.
It's going to be an interesting remainder to this season as well as next season, with everything moving around behind the seasons. Apparently, the FIA is also looking at reducing the number of races on the calendar back to 16, which we haven't had a season that long since 2003. And there's also the controversy of Andretti trying to get into F1 by next season. If they can't get their bid fully processed, then they will most likely end up buying out one of the teams that are at the back of the grid.
The season is getting hectic, both on and off the track, as more and more information comes to light. Car upgrades, sponsor updates, teams rebranding and trying to get into F1. Future plans coming to light 2 seasons out for the 2026 regulation changes. It is all so very exciting, isn't it?
From a fan standpoint, I would have to agree. You have so much information put on the table, you have to imagine how things would play out when there's only so much that can actually be made possible. The reality that some teams wish to join the grid but can't, alongside sponsors eager to showcase their names globally in a sport like F1, is intriguing. I'm eager to see how things unfold, but we must remain open-minded to all possibilities.
F1 is significantly broadening its appeal to American fans and racers. It's been since 2005 that we've seen an American driver on the grid, prior to Logan Sargent's entry last season. This year, another American driver has joined. With Haas being an American team and the ongoing discussions about Andretti, we could see a fully fledged American team on the grid, making 2 American teams on the grid. We also have word that Alpine may be looking at other sponsors due to Renault backing out of F1 at the end of the season, which makes for an even bigger twist. We could have 2 American teams, Audi, and even 1 or 2 other new teams, all by the 2026 season. That's exciting news, but let's get back to the now and get back to racing here in Montreal.
Lap 24 of 35 now after that very interesting commentary, as we're pretty spaced out here in the middle of the grid. But that's going to be pretty much it, because lap 28, not really much has changed. A couple of positions here and there. We're still 10 seconds back. See, the rain is starting to fall as we're coming through the final chicane on these medium tires, and we're hoping to get to the rest of the race. But there's a yellow flag ahead, and there's a car on the grass. Who's it going to be returning this corner? And it's going to be Lance Stroll in the grass. If you guys remember in F1 23, Max Verstappen came in contact with us and I believe pulled a safety car, but this is going to be more than that. This is going to be a red flag here in Canada, which means we're most likely going to have to race in the rain. Alright, so luckily around this time we saw what happened. Stroll spinning around in sector 1, it was going to be a safety car, and then it bumped up to a red flag. So we're going to have to...
Disabled DRS. DRS is now disabled. Okay, we've done all right so far, but this is a chance to take a breath. We've got another half of this race to go, and there's still a big opportunity there.
We're definitely going to have to bump down the difficulty setting for red flags. But yeah, so that was the idea that we were thinking for under the safety car, was switch over to intermediates for 5 laps, I guess. So let's get right to it. Alright, so here we are, 5-lap sprint in the rain on intermediate tires as we're off to a good start. Gasly's there on the right side, we're off to a better start, we're pushing him off. And we're going to make a bold move here on the inside, try to make up as many positions as we can, taking a lot of curb, and basically carrying the car's momentum, trying not to hit the brakes. We're up in the P8 as we file in behind Leclerc, looking to make a move here as he's on the inside. We force him on the inside, and we make up that position into P7. And it's us into P7. We unfortunately knocked out Pierre Gasly from the top 10 because of our move there in Sector 1. But we are going to fight for as many points as we can here, as Ricciardo is ahead. Verstappen still ahead against Lando Norris. Perez P3, Hamilton P4. Piastri, Ricciardo, myself, Leclerc, Sainz, and Albon for our top 10. As I honestly still feel a lot more comfortable on these intermediate tires, as we see Leclerc on the inside in the mirror trying to make a move. He backs off, and it's going to be the 2 Ferraris side by side coming through that final, well, the only hairpin really on the track. But yeah, they're going to be swapping positions, and we're going to be sitting comfortably in P7 as of right now. So we hit the brakes. I don't know, a little iffy there as we're coming through the chicane. But we definitely have to watch out for it, because this rain supposedly will get worse as we get closer to the end of the race, as these tires wear out. You can see as we're on the final lap, trying to defend against the Ferraris here. The rain is not letting up, but we were able to manage. Coming up to the final chicane here, the Wall of Champions, taking a lot of curb there, no warning, as we unfortunately have a very spotty end of the race for P7 here in Canada.
And in the end, there was no Verstappen. Max Verstappen, he takes victory.
Wow, That's 3 wins in a row. They really are on a roll now and really building great momentum. They're clearly one to look out for.
The drivers are en route to the podium as we speak. What a fantastic win for the Red Bull team. They performed exceptionally today, keeping us firmly on the edge of our seats throughout the entirety of the race. Congratulations to everybody at the team. After an event like that, who knows what the sport has in store for us next time out? Be sure to join us once again as we continue to bring you all the excitement of Formula One.